Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Friday, August 5th. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Matt Hoffman in for Maya Trabulsi. They're not giving up without a fight. Community members, flanked by local lawmakers, are urging a judge to block the placement of a violent sexual predator in their East County neighborhood. As KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne tells us, this fight is nothing new.
I am terrified.
Borrego Springs residents gathered outside the downtown San Diego courthouse early this morning to voice their concerns about sexually violent predator Douglas Badger being placed in their community.
It's a mother's worst nightmare to know that you're being put in a situation where you're unable to protect your children.
Terry Kellmeyer lives across the street from the house where state officials want to put Badger.
My daughter here is with me today. She's one of my three. She's deaf. She cannot hear. She could not hear footsteps coming up behind her. She couldn't hear an SVP at her bedroom window at night. It is absolutely terrifying, and it is not okay.
Laura Anderson also lives near the house and is upset he could be the second sexually violent predator placed in Borrego Springs this year.
It has got to stop. There has got to be a better solution for the whole community, for the city, for the state. They cannot be placed in communities. If this sexually violent predator was not okay to be placed in Rancho Bernardo, was not okay to be placed in Mount Helix, and not appropriate, what makes us? Why are we any different? Why do we get dumped on, so to speak?
The residents were joined by local leaders, including State Senator Brian Jones, who said he presented a bill earlier this year to avoid placing sexually violent predators in communities.
Governor Newsom can make the decision and make the declaration that these sexually violent predators will be housed on state property, such as Donovan or other California state properties where they can be monitored.
Until such a bill is passed, County Supervisor Jim Desmond says communities like Borrego Springs will continue to get traumatized.
With this placement or any placement, what this does is it really turns the neighborhoods, turns the people living in their neighborhood, their lives upside down.
No decision was made on Badger's placement in court today, but the judge allowed speakers to voice their opinions. If the judge decides not to place Badger at the Borrego Springs location, the state will have to find another place for him. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
A rape investigation involving several members of the San Diego State football team has now been turned over to the district attorney's office. KPBS reporter Thomas Fudge got reaction from the legal community and the woman's father.
The investigation took 9 months from the time the accusations were made. During that time, the alleged victim's father said the police gave very little information about how the investigation was going. The investigation concluded amid heightened publicity caused by the woman telling the media her side of the story. What explains the length of the probe?
Either something's happened that has led them to finish their investigation that we're not aware of, or they've been sitting on it for a long time, and finally, with all of the media that's been going out there, they decided to take a hot potato and throw it into the DA's court.
We are withholding the identity of the woman's father to protect her privacy. Now 18, the alleged victim was a high school girl who says she was gang raped by perhaps 5 men at an off-campus party near SDSU. She said she had been drinking and said she fell in and out of consciousness during the attack. The investigation has identified the alleged attackers as current and former members of the university's football team. Veteran criminal defense attorney Gretchen Von Helms has followed the case. She says this was a difficult investigation with lots of evidence to examine.
So nowadays, it's not just you interview a witness and then you file charges. Nowadays, it's the forensic downloads, social media, the phone downloads, the DNA. So it's all more complicated than it used to be.
She said certain facts of the case also made it very tricky.
The young woman was intoxicated, highly intoxicated. And so she wasn't able to know who was assaulting her and what the people's phone numbers were, what their names were. She didn't know any of that. So they had to glean that through other witnesses that were at the party.
Former San Diego District Attorney Paul Finks told KPBS of another case from 1997 when he was DA, in which 3 San Diego State football team members were accused of rape. He said the investigation was not a good one, and contradictory evidence caused them to release all of the suspects. In today's very similar case, the woman's father said from the standpoint of the victim, the course of the investigation has been very frustrating.
One of the things that's been really difficult is having absolutely no control. My daughter has had no control from the time that this incident happened, no control over the investigation from San Diego State, from the San Diego Police Department, from the way that it has been portrayed in the press. When she turned 18, she finally decided that it was a good time for her to start to push back and, like I said, tell her side of the story. And I think it's been empowering for her.
Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
A bipartisan group of senators have introduced a bill that would increase the number of Border Patrol agents. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis says a lack of staff is one of the main reasons behind long waits at the border.
Long border wait times cost our binational economy billions of dollars every year. So says Jimena Villaseñor Martinez. She's the International Business Affairs Coordinator for the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce.
So even before the pandemic in 2016, we nearly lost over $2 billion in economic output due to border delays.
Increasing the number of Customs and Border Protection staff could help open up more lanes at local border crossings. But this bill would only increase the number of Border Patrol agents who work in between the ports of entry, not the agents who work in the vehicle and pedestrian inspection lanes.
This will add to the Border Patrol staff, but it does not address CBP agents present in our land ports of entry.
Gustavo de la Fuente is the executive director of the Smart Border Coalition. He says staffing shouldn't be the only solution. CBP ought to embrace technology and new ideas to make the border more efficient.
What else is going on other than staffing? What's going on with technology? What's going on with the way we process people, right? And it's a processing issue sometimes, not just staffing.
Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
Not only are gas prices falling significantly, but there's big news on the U.S. economy as a whopping 528,000 jobs were added. The unemployment rate now the lowest in 50 years. Reporter Chris Wynn with more on the economic outlook.
The latest employment snapshot is surprising economists and giving the Biden administration something to celebrate.
We saw people hiring at not record numbers, but at big numbers.
Data released Friday by the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows the U.S. economy has now regained all jobs lost during the COVID-19 pandemic after a blowout jobs report showed a gain of 528,000 jobs.
If we were in a recession, companies would be laying people off rather than hiring them.
Some analysts are cautiously optimistic and say it's important to put these figures in perspective.
Eventually, we're going to run out of bodies. You can't have an unemployment rate be at the 53-year low and keep adding 500,000 jobs a month. There just aren't enough people.
At 3.5%, the July jobless rate matched the half-century low last seen in February 2020. President Biden taking a victory lap, crediting his economic policies for the encouraging numbers, but acknowledging there's more work to do.
I know it's hard to feel good about job creation when you already have a job and you're dealing with rising prices, food and gas, and so much more.
Administration officials say they'll continue their work on bringing the cost down.
Whether it's through releasing oil reserves, whether it's working on this Inflation Reduction Act, working with companies to bring more people out, we're doing everything we can to bring these inflationary pressures on you down so you have more money in your pocket.
In Washington, Chris Wynn, KPBS News.
A major economic package appears now closer to becoming law. It addresses health care, climate change, and taxing big corporations. The Senate is expected to vote on the Inflation Reduction Act possibly tomorrow. It will likely pass even without Republican votes, then head to the House sometime next week. As school districts across the country continue to open for the fall semester, there is excitement and uncertainty about being back on campus. KPBS education reporter MG Perez went to Chula Vista to show us the newest school in the South Bay and its commitment to students.
Do you know what grade you guys are in? Student guides are happy to show off their brand new school that's just opened in the Chula Vista Elementary School District, named after local legend Fahari Jeffers.
She was an amazing, dynamic woman, a former Black Panther. She was a civil rights leader as well.
Dr. Shauna Codrington is the principal leading Jeffers Elementary and its 350 students in TK through 6th grade. There is a staff of 54 teachers and other classified employees, too. This 8-acre campus in Otay Ranch is state-of-the-art, equipped to support children who have survived the COVID pandemic and other challenges. We see the wonderful lunch ladies who prepare the lunch. And if you can notice, every lunch that comes, they will serve it on that tray. Jeffers is getting funding from the new California Universal Meal Program, offering free food to every student, no matter their need. And the state law also pays for upgraded school kitchens and staff training.
It means everything and more, and here's why. If students don't come to school and they don't have healthy food to eat, then they don't learn well. In order for our kids to learn and do their best, they have to have healthy meals.
We're going to line up in least to greatest order. The 17 teachers on this campus are on the front line of educating and reconnecting students to a more familiar in-person classroom setting after 2 years of virtual learning.
We were some of the most consistent things that they saw, and for some of them, the only outside connections that they had. And so they needed us there, and then they needed us to be able to come back to.
All of the mistakes that they made in building schools years ago, they've figured it all out, and they've improved everything.
Keeping this campus safe is another priority for the district. The school has partnered with Chula Vista Police for special safety trainings for children and their parents. And there is a policy that all doors are locked at all times in an effort to prevent a tragedy that has happened so many times before at schools across the country. So far, the reviews on the new buildings are good from the people who matter most.
They're very amazing, and along with the play structure, the builders did a really nice job.
That is encouraging news for a new school and a new school year. MG Perez, KPBS News.
It's being called the City of San Diego's most ambitious strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Today, local leaders applauded a new climate plan, which calls for getting rid of those emissions within the next 13 years. They say it's crucial to our health, especially our kids.
There are parts of San Diego where, based on where you live, you have an incredibly higher chance of having asthma, of getting cancer. We're talking about babies who are not able to breathe clean air simply because of where they live.
To reduce emissions, the city plans to remove fossil fuels in new building construction, increase access to electric vehicles, and an even more ambitious goal of cutting back on car travel. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen takes a closer look at what that means for the city's bike program.
Bike lanes have caused a stir in several communities where some residents see them as a nuisance, not worth the loss of travel lanes or parking. But cyclists and climate activists say they're necessary to get more people out of cars, the city's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions.
We have the ambitious goals, but we don't have a clear roadmap to get there.
Will Radigan is advocacy director for the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition. He says the city can't keep debating whether dangerous streets have enough room for bike lanes. Protection for cyclists should come first, he says, and when speeds are high enough,
they'll have very clear guidelines on what kind of bikeway they need to install. And also, we're hoping this would be passed as an ordinance that would hold the transportation department legally accountable for actually implementing that kind of bikeway.
City Council member Raul Campillo says while he understands why some people don't like bike lanes, they're about more than just climate change.
I think people fail to see that these investments in infrastructure are going to help create jobs. They're going to create better health outcomes, and all of that creates a more healthy and safe community for all of us.
City staff say by February, they'll present a roadmap for implementing the city's new goal of net zero emissions. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
We'll have a pleasant weekend here as moisture pulls away, so we'll see some drying Saturday into Sunday. And as we dry it out, it gets warmer in the inland areas. Moisture, though, that's coming back at us late Sunday into Monday. On the water vapor loop, you can see our first surge of moisture in the area. And now the yellow represents the drying that's trying to work its way back into Southern California. And overnight tonight, we'll see our temperatures hovering in the upper 60s with a partly cloudy sky. 67 Oceanside, Ramona 63, El Cajon to 70, Mount Laguna right around 63. A warm night in Borrego Springs, low 80s. For tomorrow, beautiful day. Getting warmer inland to Ramona 94, El Cajon 96. Clouds will give way to sunshine at the beaches. And we see that on the future cast, starting off with morning clouds. They'll start to erode away. In the mountains, a few clouds bubbling up, but it should be a good day. Head up to the high country if that's your desire. Looking at the weather on Saturday, drier air returns, pleasant at the coast. Late Sunday into Monday and Tuesday, moisture is coming back to the high deserts and the mountains. Looking at the forecast, along the coast, it should be warm and humid, right around 80 degrees. More clouds as we take you into early next week. Inland areas will be warming up, see upper 80s and some 90s. And we'll see plenty of sunshine, a little more humid. Could there be a stray shower on Monday, perhaps? And then as we take you to the mountains, better chance for a storm around later Sunday, and especially so on Monday. And as we take you out to the deserts, we'll see temperatures, of course, in the triple digits. And then as the moisture comes back at us, from Sunday to Monday, a few thunderstorms around, and maybe another storm in the area on Wednesday. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
A new study finds children battling long COVID had a much greater chance of having serious lung, heart, kidney, and even pancreatic problems compared to kids who did not get COVID. The CDC considers it long COVID when symptoms last more than 4 weeks after the initial infection. The study showed kids with long COVID had higher rates of acute pulmonary embolism, myocarditis, kidney failure, and are more likely to develop type 1 diabetes. The CDC hopes this research will prompt doctors and caregivers to watch out for these serious symptoms and conditions. The agency also hopes it will spur parents to get their children vaccinated. Tonight, the number of confirmed and probable monkeypox cases in San Diego County has now grown to 71. As health officials scramble to contain the outbreaks, one veteran journalist sees similarities from covering the HIV/AIDS virus almost 4 decades ago. Now he's urging health officials not to repeat the same mistakes. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado shares his story.
Decades before monkeypox, another virus was predominantly affecting gay men, HIV/AIDS.
People just look at the condition and lose sight that there's a person there.
Reporter Hank Plant was at ground zero for the epidemic, San Francisco.
It sounds strange, but it was kind of a gift for me to be an openly gay man and a reporter working in San Francisco. And so I was able to tell the story from my own perspective and seeing that it was affecting my friends. So it was always more than a story to me, and I wanted to get it right.
And getting it right was not easy, especially when many, including government officials, didn't think it was important.
The subject came up at a press conference in the White House when Reagan was president, and in the press room, the press secretary was asked about this new disease, AIDS. And the room laughed.
No, it is. I mean, it's a pretty serious thing that 1 in every 3 people that get this have died, and I wondered if the president is aware of it.
I don't have it. Are you? Do you?
You don't have it. Well, I'm relieved to hear that, Larry.
At the time, Plant says there was little to no information about the virus, so his station, KPIX, made a real commitment to cover it.
So we were going on the air every night, telling people how to not get the disease, what was new with treatment, were any of the drugs working. And remember, this was at a time when the Reagan administration was barely talking about it.
Still, he says the lack of information led to fear and abuse of the gay community, living in fear themselves.
People were being kicked out of their apartments. People were being fired. There were no legal protections back then. So it was really awful. It was terrible.
Plant says by the time President Reagan said the word AIDS for the first time, 23,000 Americans had died of the virus.
There are a lot of parallels to the beginning of AIDS. There was inaction by the government back then.
He says the current monkeypox emergency is giving him flashbacks to those early days when he covered AIDS.
There were a lot of gay men who were being scapegoated and blamed for AIDS back then, and you can bet that there are gay men being blamed today for this. There's a lot of fear in the gay community that that's going to get worse.
Plant urges health and government officials to get out front once and for all and explain exactly how the virus is transmitted and do everything they can to get vaccines to help stop monkeypox from spreading.
We're going to have a lot more cases. It is preventable. You know, where's the vaccine? Where can people get the vaccine? Get the word out. You know, do your job.
Plant has earned every award imaginable for his AIDS coverage, including a Peabody.
Nearly 3,000 cases of AIDS have already hit this city. Half those people have died. People have sewn real life into these quilts. Teddy bears, photographs, locks of hair, and a lot of love letters.
But his goal back then was to save lives. He believes reporters now also have an opportunity to make a positive impact.
Don't be afraid to tell the truth. I think that there is some fear particularly among straight journalists, that they don't want to offend the gay community by saying you're getting it from gay sex. It's not a sexually transmitted disease, but it's the close contact. And I think the journalists have to tell the truth about it and not worry about the backlash.
He says he learned a lot from covering AIDS, a lot of it about himself.
Once you slay your dragons in life, it makes you stronger. And so that was my big fear when I was growing up, like a lot of gay kids. And once I came out, I just started to relax and enjoy life.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
There's a bit of good news for people looking to buy a new home. Mortgage rates have dropped for the second week in a row. According to Freddie Mac, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate averaged 4.99% last week. That's the first time since April that the rate has been less than 5%. But it is still a lot higher than this time last year. It was around 2.77% then. The start of the year is when rates begin to spike. They hit a high of 5.81% in mid-June. And since then, economic concerns have made them more volatile. Despite the rising cost of materials and labor shortages, a growing number of people are updating their homes to adapt to remote work or even school. And if that's a trend you're looking to jump on, experts say not all upgrades have the same return on investment. Melissa Rainey takes a closer look.
With home prices soaring, a growing number of homeowners are choosing to upgrade their homes, but experts say not all renovations have the same payoff.
When the market is getting hotter, when people's homes are becoming worth more money, they see investing more money into the home as a solid choice.
If you want the best return on investment on your next home remodel project, ditch the idea of a spa-like bathroom or magazine-worthy kitchen. A recent report from the National Association of Realtors and the National Association of the Remodeling Industry says interior projects that recoup the most money are refinishing existing hardwood floors or installing new ones. The estimated cost of new hardwoods is around $5,000, but with a $6,500 return on investment. 118% of your cost is recovered.
Change flooring from carpet into hardwood or LVP, you are much less likely to run yourself into big problems that can drain your budget.
Another project with high ROI, an insulation upgrade, with 100% of the cost expected to be recovered. For comparison, the cost of adding a new primary bedroom suite is estimated at $182,000, with only about $100,000 of that cost recovered.
One big mistake that inexperienced homeowners or investors make when they're doing a renovation is they go too grandiose. It is very common when you start moving walls to find electrical issues that need to be brought up to code, plumbing leaks that you didn't know existed.
When it comes to the outside of your house, replacing the roof and the garage doors have the best return on investment, with both recouping all their costs. For today's Consumer Watch, I'm Melissa Rainey.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the U.S. economy adds many more jobs than expected. But will that alleviate fears of a recession? Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Tiki Oasis, one of the biggest and longest-running festivals in San Diego, is in full swing this weekend. The convention is taking over the town and country resort for 5 nights and 4 days of live music, shopping, and educational seminars. Check that out. The Tiki Oasis Marketplace includes over 150 artists and makers. There's even tropical cocktails, too, and art exhibits, and more. Most tickets are sold out, but there are still some available for Sunday night. The Golden Girls live in a new pop-up restaurant in Beverly Hills. The Golden Girls Kitchen recreates sets from the beloved TV show, including the kitchen where Rose, Dorothy, Blanche, and Sophia all sat around the table. Fans can also take photos in Blanche's bedroom. The dining attraction is drawing people of all ages who have fond memories from the show.
I just love their friendship, and I think it's reflected with women in general. I think that we really love to have groups of friends that we feel comfortable with and have fun with and laugh with.
This pop-up will be open in Los Angeles, Miami, Chicago, San Francisco, and New York City. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley. And by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.